Okay, it's 7:03, and I'll call this meeting of the Urbana Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission meeting to order. Could we have a roll call?
Annie Adams,
Here.
Bill Brown,
Here.
Bruce Michelson, Kara Dudek, Yusuf Shaw.
Here.
Nancy Westcott,
Here.
Susan Jones,
Here.
Daniel Sapphire,
Here.
Sartak Prasad,
Here.
Audrey Ishii,
Here.
John Zeman, here.
Great, thanks. We do have a quorum. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Seeing none. Approval of the minutes of previous meeting, I don't think we have any yet, so we'll put that off until next month. Public input. There doesn't appear to be anyone from the public here. Unfinished business. So we had a proposal a presentation last month from Bruce Michelson about potentially building a pavilion to promote the downtown. Well, on the agenda, it's promoting downtown pedestrian bicycle activity with farmers market pavilions. So he had presented that last month, and we agreed to consider a resolution that we could send to City Council. So I sent out a draft resolution. Bruce had sent me some language, and Kara had also sent a couple of things. So I put all that together and emailed that out. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, because I just sent it out this afternoon, but has anybody not had a chance to look at it? You have not? Okay. I have a copy if you want, printed copy. No, I don't think I have mine. Would you like me to? Okay. Would you like me to put it up on the screen? Or should we just talk about it? Okay. Let me, I think I have it. Okay. Can you see that okay? So the first two whereases are kind of boilerplate. Whereas the City of Urbana Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission was established by City Council in 2006 and authorized under City Code. Whereas the duties of the Commission include advising the Mayor and City Council on bicycle and pedestrian issues and recommending actions as it deems appropriate. And then, whereas the Urbana Market at the Square, the market has proven to be one of the most popular and successful pedestrian venues in the central core of the city, and whereas towns of comparable size, location, and resources have shown that attractive open-air shelters for such markets can be affordable and enhance downtown appearance and vitality, and whereas a well-designed and constructed pavilion would provide protection and appeal in inclement weather, benefit patronage, and provide better value to vendors. And whereas the creation of infrastructure to provide shelter to the market directly aligns with the two plans which BPAC stewards, the Urbana Pedestrian Master Plan and the Urbana Bicycle Master Plan. And whereas Market at the Square is specifically mentioned within both plans, signifying just how important it is in a bicycle and pedestrian destination in Urbana. There was one more. And whereas this project addresses the accessibility and connectivity, equity, and vibrancy pillars of the pedestrian master plan. You can tell this was Kara's part. Most directly connecting to the vibrancy pillar, which aims to create healthy, sustainable, aesthetically pleasing, and economically stimulating community streetscapes and natural landscapes that both inspire and facilitate walking. Therefore, be it resolved, BPAC recommends that the city, in consultation with the Market at the Square Advisory Board and established market vendors, assess the feasibility of and interest in construction of an attractive pavilion on a well-selected open space to promote the market and provide a venue for other community activities. Any comments, suggested corrections, additions?
I like how specific it is and how open it is. You know, it's not, it's like I said, it's do this kind of thing, and then we can think of ways to do that kind of thing. And his presentation last month would be, you know, really helpful in helping people visualize it and see where it could go.
Yeah, I might put in, that's one thing that I could add is a footnote with a link to the meeting we discussed it at. I don't know if he gave us his presentation. We could even ask him to give us his presentation. We could probably put that up online or something with the pictures. He had
yeah.
some nice example pictures.
Yeah. Because
Yes.
unless you see it, you know, when you see it, then you can really understand, oh, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But
Or else,
I
yeah.
guess the other thing I'm thinking, though, is it would be in the parking lot, though, right?
Well, we didn't, most likely, I mean, that's where the Realm study put it, but we didn't specify. I mean, he did suggest, you know, there might be other locations too that it would be appropriate. But
Well, I guess if there's a possibility it would be in the parking lot, probably the city would have to be, it would have to be in discussion with the city, too.
it'd have to be,
In discussion with the city as well as the marketplace.
oh, yeah, I think
Group.
I said,
Oh, maybe I
recommends that the city in consultation with the Market at Square Advisory
Okay.
Board. So the city's the main player, but consult with the advisory board, vendors, who could say other stakeholders, if there's businesses or something they might want to work with. But
Is there anything that you want to say about kind of, and maybe it's just implied by what a pavilion is, but about the intention of having like more, allowing the market to go on in poor weather conditions and things? I don't know if there's anything that you want to talk about, like allowing the market to and other activities to be,
That's
take place
there.
in more weather conditions. Did you say that? Okay.
it says something about
Yeah.
inclement weather, yeah.
Excellent. I'm sorry.
Would
Yes.
provide protection and appeal in inclement weather.
Perfect.
I
Some really good whereases, by the way.
Yeah.
I like mentioning the inclement weather. My reservation, I guess, on pavilions is that I wish they were used for more things than just the market. So something to make it more park-like or available for other uses could give it more utility. And I think my other reservation is, does it really need to be a pavilion? Like, that helps with the inclement weather and it gives it a permanent space, but I wish the market would be right on Main Street and close down Main from, Race to Broadway during the day, because that's right in the heart of downtown, and I don't think there's a lot of great alternatives that don't take up right away to place the market. I know closures have happened there in the past. St. Patrick's Day Parade made me think of it. I know they don't close that section exactly, but I hope the pavilion doesn't preclude looking into other alternatives like that.
So I watched the presentation. I didn't read the large document. I just watched the presentation. And they did talk about, I think, shutting down that Broadway street that you suggested. They did show a pavilion, and they said having like garage doors that open and close to keep it indoors and out. And they also talked about having it like right out the view of City Hall here, so creating that connectivity between City Hall and then this Market Plaza view through here. And in some ways it's really smart because there's the co-op, which is there, so then that brings you into this natural, there's a starting space, and then you can slowly move through these other spaces over to the downtown. It is hard though, because you do want people in your downtown, and I know the other thing that's been like running through my head since I watched that presentation was the post office. I call it the post office parking lot, but the city owns the parking lot where, you know, you can bike up and put your mail in the slot and then bike away. It's like a big like roundabout. The city owns that cute little space, which is a really nice sort of in-between space. It's a connective space. I'm not sure you'd want to put a pavilion there, but I definitely think that's a really interesting thought. And then someone else had mentioned to me that she had an amazing experience at Findlay Market. And so I started looking up what Findlay Market was, and it's this large outdoor, basically pavilion, as we're suggesting, that's indoor, outdoor. They continue to like add on to it because so many people are so excited about it. It's so full of people. And then it's on these tight little streets surrounding it. And so, you know, obviously like an indoor, outdoor market right in downtown on Main Street would be phenomenal. I just think it would be hard. And then my other question is I know Cynthia Hoyle, and again, I know we're not deciding where this thing goes. We've decided that's not part of what we discuss. But Cynthia Hoyle has always suggested for the MTD that we would never want to shut down any of the streets around Main Street. So you wouldn't want to 100% close down Main Street, Race Street, Broadway, or the street where people come and go from that parking ramp. And I've always thought that was a little limiting, and she's not here. And if she's listening at home, she's probably pulling out her hair. But I always thought that was a little limiting because you can create woofners where you can have both cars, bikes, pedestrians, and people seating. And again, that was part of the plan. If you watch the little presentation, they talked about extending the sidewalk and making the street a little thinner. And I was kind of like, well, instead of just making it thinner, just make it a shared space. And then that's, again, easier to shut down. And then my final question just, though, is how many more years do we have on that parking deck? Because that parking deck is going to be ridiculously expensive to repair. I'm sure we have never made our money back on it. I'm sure it's just been a sinkhole of money. So that is just something, just city, you know, because I think now it's up to $20,000. If you build a deck, I think it's between 20 and 30 per parking space to build a parking space in a deck. So that's something that also they talked about in the public realm study, was removing the parking deck and putting in like this type of marketplace, which is, again, sort of in between, juxtaposing different spaces. And then, of course, they talked about, you know, what can you do right now? You know, what's like light movable seating and other, you know, William H. White things. So it was great. That's all I got. And I love this. I think this is beautiful. I like that it's flexible yet specific, where it's like we want high quality. And I like that you would be linking to his presentation. I also would be open to us creating a presentation that's even more specific. Like now that I've seen this other market, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Because again, it is like, you have to kind of see these things before you can actually understand. Because you're kind of like, well, why are we creating another retail space when we already have dead retail in downtown? We have dead retail in the mall. Why are we creating yet another retail space? Might be people's argument. But
Like the market at the square.
I think it would work.
Well, a couple things. First, on the parking deck, it's my kind of vague memory that almost all of the TIF 1 money went to pay off the parking deck because that was built like in the late 70s, early 80s when interest rates were really high. They took out a bond, and almost all the TIF 1 money went to pay off that parking deck. It has been kept up. There has been repairs done to it over the years, so I don't think it's in terrible shape. For something Dan mentioned about the park-like venue for other activities, that is mentioned in the therefore be it resolved. It says, and provide a venue for other community activities. I do kind of like the park-like language, and some of the council members mentioned that they thought downtown could use more green space. So if you could develop green space around the pavilion idea, that would also be nice. But I think some of the other things about the downtown and some of the other reconfigurations maybe is something you could do individually. I don't know if that's something we're going to be able to come to agreement on. This does seem like it's a little bit more of a concrete idea that we seem to have some agreement on last month. So if you want to keep going forward with this.
I'm wondering if, like, maybe we just want to say an attractive pavilion, or, like, just open that up so it's not pavilion. Is that?
Or say that the pricing is, I think what blew all of our minds was that the pricing was between 400 and 1 million. Like, I don't think any of us expected it to be in that price range, and that's the only, honestly, that's the only thing I see missing here, because to me, when he said, and here's the cost, and I was like, you're kidding me. So that to me was eye-opening, but I don't really know how
Do you think
fit.
that was high or low?
Oh, I thought it was very reasonable,
Oh, okay.
very reasonable.
Yeah, I thought that was reasonable too.
Yeah. Yeah, I
know
thought
how-
it was doable. To me, what I liked about it is I went, oh, we can do that. This isn't like pie in the sky. Like, we can totally do this. So,
I think there is something about affordability. I don't remember.
well, you did a good job saying it shouldn't be ugly. And I think Bruce in his presentation and again, and there's nothing wrong with saying it shouldn't be ugly. You create an ugly space, people don't want to be in it. You create, I'm biting my tongue.
Can be affordable and enhance, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you did a great job saying, like, it needs to be beautiful, it needs to be a space people want to be in, but we didn't mention, I just don't know how you'd get that in there, other than name the PDF, you can build you can.
Well, I mean, we'll send this to City Council by email once it's approved, and I could send links in the email to either pictures or other ideas.
Because he did a good job with, like, similar-sized communities, 400,000 to like 1 million, 1.5 million, I think was where he sat with it. And I was like, that's a great argument.
Just a note on the document, and while echoing John's comment that I really appreciate all the whereases, I'm wondering if the last 3 on the first page, if that could be one paragraph, or procedurally you can't have a paragraph, because they all reference the same things with regards to the plans.
Yeah, they're both kind of plan, or all 3 of those last 3, I guess, are kind of plan specific. Those are the 3 that Kara, she might have put them all in one. I think she just sent a paragraph and I divide them up just to make it a little bit more readable, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of like the emphasis that, no, this is what these are our goals. No, these are our goals, and we're.
Well, I think usually with the resolutions too, each whereas is kind of its own phrase, or it could be a sentence, but usually not too much more than that. Otherwise you get, because this is all one sentence, if you didn't notice.
Yeah.
The whole resolution is one sentence, but because of a lot of semicolons. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's fine. I like the whereases.
Okay.
Dan, do you feel that this was what you were saying, that you felt you were concerned that us focusing on a pavilion would miss out on better opportunities. Is that your concern?
I mean, I guess, yeah, I don't think a pavilion is the end-all be-all. I think closing a street could be cheaper and more enjoyable, and I know the parking lot is close to common ground and the city, but Main Street is closer to more businesses, and I guess to clarify, Cynthia's not here, but she's also a bicycle consultant for MTD, and I think it's fine to close down streets in downtown Urbana if it's in coordination with MTD, ideally. We've rerouted out of there plenty of times. I know I've come up with reroutes down there. It's definitely doable, so that, like, MTD buses go here should not be an impediment to creating a more walkable space, even if it is temporarily on a, Saturday morning.
And I was gonna say, I noticed, like, when I was looking at this Farley Market, it was a lot of, like, what you're seeing now, like, for outdoor seating, like, in cities that are year-round outdoor seating. They're calling them, like, restaurant shacks. So they're just sort of these little, like, and so a vision you just suggested would be just, like, maybe a series of these little shacks. And, like, Norden built, a local company built a bunch of stuff like that for the outdoor market at Riggs Brewery. And so they've always wanted to do that in downtown Urbana over Christmas, is like set up these tiny little stalls in downtown Urbana and create like a Christmas plaza there. So that might cost less, but I don't know.
I think, well, it does say assess the feasibility of, so it, it doesn't say we're sure this is what's right and let's do it. It does say assess the feasibility of and interest in. The other thing that occurs to me sometimes is, I don't know, the people that looked at the downtown realm study, did you notice the heat maps that showed like where people thought were good spaces and not so good spaces? And actually Lincoln Square is pretty hot for a good space, so a lot of people like it. And so even though it might be nice to draw market traffic to a downtown street where there are other businesses, I think the market already does get people to go into the co-op and walk through that Lincoln Square. I know I do, especially if I don't find what I want at the market. I'll go to the co-op, and sometimes I'll have lunch at Baldorado's or something like that. So there are other businesses that the market supports besides just the downtown. And I know that was one of the goals, was to get people to go downtown and do other stuff, but there is other stuff.
And if we have the
there.
pavilion, that might get enough more folks downtown that people would be more amenable to closing the street.
Or turning what I call the USPS parking lot into a play space for kids, or like, you can't start everywhere all at once.
Right.
Yeah, sorry.
Everywhere.
Didn't mean to make an Oscar reference. We can't start everywhere. I'm not going to repeat it. We have to just, you need to start in one place and have that be successful and have people understand and be okay with that being successful. And then we can build from there and be like, oh, there's people here. Like, can we maybe? And I love too, the other thing they mentioned is blasting making, what do they call it, curbless, creating curbless spaces for people to be in, and people are a lot more comfortable in curbless spaces and moving around curbless spaces. So I thought that was really helpful. But again, when people see something successful, they're like, well, I want that success over here. And if you have certain business owners who are refusing to even consider shutting down Main Street or making Main Street a Wolfner Plaza, and they see a lot of people shopping, year-round out there, they might say, okay, what can you do for me? Well, how can we maybe begin to activate these other spaces? Because I do know there's a lot of hard no's in this community from people who have been here a while and have invested a lot of time and energy. And so it's people who haven't lived here, from what I can tell, who haven't lived here a very, very long time. I mean, I heard a person say, I had my senior prom in the mall. And I'm like, okay, cool. I can't relate. you know, like I can't, like that's cool, but I didn't go. You know, I mean, I went to Chi-Chi's. Can we talk about Chi-Chi's? They are no longer in business. I went with Chi-Chi's with my girlfriends. But so anyway, so what I'm trying to say is like, I think we need to create, I think we all need to, I think as a community, we can get behind this idea and we can create success with this idea, and we could see, maybe we could create more spaces, that are successful people spaces, because right now we really do not have a lot of successful people spaces in downtown Urbana, public.
I think another thing staff would probably be looking at too is just the amount of work required every Saturday. If they have to set something up downtown and take it down and get Public Works involved, contact MTV, it's a lot more work than if a structure's there, which is even better than what they have now, and there'd probably be less. And it's a parking lot, or if it doesn't involve closing streets and setting up and taking down, I'm sure they would like that.
I mean, based on this discussion, is this one item, or is this really two things that we want to explore? Like having the pavilion versus having another resolution that says we need to make better use of our
Yeah, it
downtown
might be a
public
matter
roads.
of if you want to like refine that idea, come up with another resolution. Say also consider the feasibility of this.
Yeah, because they don't have to be like exclusive. They could both be presented to council.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of wondering how this all fits with the report that was just created. I mean, I just wonder if we need to get further down. I mean, it seems like a way that people were kind of looking into all of that anyway.
Yeah,
And
I
so
think,
I just
mean,
don't quite
I know
get.
Bruce was kind of thinking of this without seeing that report, and it's been talked about before, but the timing might be good actually to go with that report to say,
Yeah.
this is one thing we really like about that, and we think you should pursue, and that is applicable to BPAC.
Yeah, and I could just see it, the city, council taking this study with all these ideas and be like, okay, well, BPAC supports this idea that's in there. It'd be good just to emphasis when it's fresh in their minds. I could see that being good, like Bill said.
So I'm trying to remember if there were actually
We think the resolution's great.
suggestions to change this at all, or I think we do hear some suggestions that we might want to do an additional resolution.
Yeah, and that was the second thought I had, that was when I was suggesting maybe we could do like pop-up people, present on like pop-up people spaces, like kind of figure out what we could do for $500 to $1,000 or something like that, and we could maybe present on that. I don't know. Or is it just a beautiful, general, ambiguous resolution like this,
Right.
which says, we do this, and then to create more, let's create a resolution that talks about creating spaces for people to sit and feel comfortable in downtown Urbana without having to buy something or be in a space that's owned by a private company. That would be another thought.
Okay.
Don't
So
know.
are there any
I
specific
guess
changes we need to make to this?
I don't have any really specific, I mean, the resolution is just fine, but I have to say that of all the things that could be done in downtown Urbana, I would say that this is just not my favorite one. I would much rather do kind of walking areas in other part, like that whole area north of Main Street. I mean, there are businesses back there, and there's no connectivity to it, or connecting more with the campus. I mean, it's not my favorite resolution, just because I can't imagine a pavilion drawing me, unless it was like a big band shelter or something where there would be an event. Somehow aesthetically, it just does not please me.
It would be,
So,
it
but-
would be like a series of small businesses with little like stalls. Have you ever been in like a little market space
well,
like that?
That's not what this says, though. This says, a big,
I see. Yep,
mean,
good point.
I just
Good point.
don't see that, so.
I think it mostly extends the season, makes it, so often, the whole market is dependent on the weather for 2 or 3 hours on Saturday mornings, and it would make it less dependent on the weather for, if people are afraid of rain, stuff like that. But yeah, I see your point. I mean, we have had other resolutions on like the Kickapoo Rail Trail connections to Carl. We could do something on the Boneyard Pride. There is a Boneyard plan that's only 1/3 or 1/4 done. So
Is
there
it-
are opportunities up in that area that we could comment on.
Is it the word pavilion, or is it just the entire concept of the? Yeah, I guess that's I've just seen a lot of outdoor markets like this be very successful year-round, and they kind of just draw people because it's just sort of something to do. There's a lot of small businesses in them, and then you just kind of walk through them and you get a cup of hot cocoa, and there's like usually someone playing music, and it's just sort of a nice space, and it's tight and close-knit, and they're pretty small spaces, but it could be the word pavilion, maybe makes it sound like it's just a big empty park space, which is not attractive to me either whatsoever.
One thing I guess I'll add as somebody who appreciates incremental improvements, it's a nice way to start making that more of an permanent program space. So you get people used to the idea of like, oh, there's a market there, we can do other things there, and it slowly builds up that support over time.
Yeah, I think I really like this proposal or this resolution. And yes, I think it should inspire us to think, how can we organize our thoughts in other ways and make other resolutions too? But the more we can get them thinking about how can we get people walking, how can we get people there, I think the better. And this is something that I think they can understand. And I think pavilion is vague enough, but the presentation, if you show the links, those pavilions were not, they were pretty. Yeah. We could make them good places. Yeah. I like it. And especially if you put the links in the email to say, here's some of the ideas that, places like us, and especially, that are affordable, and, I think we should go for it.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve this?
I move to approve the resolution.
Okay, moved by Sue. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Dan. Any discussion? As if we haven't been discussing it.
I guess my discussion would be, this goes forward, which is great. I would like to know, though, what should BPAC do next? Are we interested in small incremental spaces that would create connectivity so people could, as Nancy's suggesting, walk around? So maybe it would be us creating, for $500, you create a treasure hunt. I don't know exactly what I like about this resolution. The reason I'm stopping is because what I like about this resolution is it's open to interpretation, and it gives people agency. We're not shutting down and saying, we will only accept a pavilion made of stone that is, right? We're giving people agency to think about what's doable, what's possible. So I'm just trying to plan what could be the next thing we could do that would be a 1-2 punch to this, which would allow for that connectivity in those possibly shutting down streets and possibly small spaces. I don't know.
I think putting a pavilion where the market is now kind of opens up the idea of creating or improving the connection up to Elm on the east side of Lincoln Square. There's a pedestrian path, but there's lighting issues. I think the grades might be a little steep in some points, and you might walk through a parking lot at some point with crumbling asphalt. There could be ways to beautify that part of Elm and that side path leading up to it in the summer when you're not walking through Lincoln Square, I suppose.
Okay. And I guess if we're ready to vote, all in favor of this resolution, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thanks. And that doesn't rule out other resolutions, Nancy. Okay, next is the annual report. I'll go ahead and pull that up too. I sent this out this afternoon, so you may not have had a chance to look at it. Full screen, there we go. Thanks. Okay, so title page, I spell everybody's name right. I did just put some people are by ordinance affiliated with certain groups, so.
I learned this earlier. Yusuf's first name has an A in it.
And my last letter on my last name is H, but I can send you the correct spelling.
Oh. Not even close, huh? Okay.
Very close.
Okay, well.
Thank you.
I wonder if spell check did that. I bet spell check must have done that.
It is a correct spelling of my name, just not the way my parents did it.
But yeah, Audrey's connected with the school district. Sartak with University of Illinois. Carol was Park District, and John is the city engineer. So those four are required. Then I did add Pace to Nancy's name, and I will make a comment on that to City Council that she's kind of our unofficial liaison with the people accessing or taking, what is it? People accessing control of their environment? Assuming control of their environment, yeah.
And then Dan is associated with MTD, I believe.
Yeah, I'm on the clock right now.
Oh, you are? So you're officially, well, you aren't required by our ordinance to be from MTD, but if,
I don't think BPAC has an MTD slot. It's just part of my position at MTD is to
okay,
represent bikes for MTD.
we could add MTD to you then.
I'm thinking that, yeah, these are things we might want to look at the bylaws. At some point, I think it would be great to have a position for PACE and MTD also. And there may,
Okay.
and we do have an empty slot for a youth representative.
Yeah, yeah, it's still empty.
I've tried.
Well,
They get interested when they're seniors and leaving, I think.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to get, I mean, we haven't tried real hard. I'm sure if we put a note on Wuna list, I'm sure we'd get some youth applying. But I tried to go through the official channels at the schools and try to get them to get people interested. So we tried to reach as
Yeah, I
broad a,
made sure
you
that
know.
everybody involved with Project Ignition knew about it. But I think that's enough for them. They're busy with Project Ignition, you know.
Yeah, I could
it's not
mention it
necessary.
at council and maybe just suggest that council members reach out and you know, recruit a youth member from their ward to apply and see what happens. Okay, and then just our BPAC background, it's pretty much the same as last year. I think I just added that we reapplied for for bicycle-friendly community. Had to recertify, reapply, review our status, I think. Because you don't really apply for gold, you just submit an application and they give you what you deserve. Oops. This, I think I added a paragraph at the beginning that I stole from somewhere. I might have changed a couple little things, but that's about the same as last year. Mostly just making the case for the city really being an advocate for bicycle and pedestrian transportation from sustainability view and health view and a lot of other views.
I think in the vehicle transportation costs, we probably should go ahead and add the cost of police response and traffic violence and
Yeah, well,
crashes and pain and
we do spend a
suffering.
lot of time on traffic issues.
I mean, you have parking and pollution, but there's a heck of a lot more. And then, how it aligns with our sustainability goals.
Yeah, and bike is a lot easier on pavement than a car is.
I think you might have had something on sustainability on the next page, I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's a discussion of parking lots and greenhouse gas and climate change.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'll see if I can get those in there. Police and
Are we
pavement.
using the word micromobility at all to
I
represent?
haven't so far,
Okay,
but we could.
yeah, because it seems like micromobility is where we're at right now with people walking, biking, scooting, all the forms people are using to get around now.
Really, and that could be in the fourth paragraph, walking and riding for transportation. Just add in there micromobility. Because people are doing that to save thousands of dollars.
And we need to get them thinking more inclusively,
Yeah, we really need to make sure we're using,
not
And-
just walking and riding.
yeah.
It's like they've just picturing and
It's people getting out to Flexen Gate on University Avenue on a micromobility
Mhm.
device.
Yeah,
So
a lot more
that they-
people are using those battery-powered skateboards, one wheels, things like that. Yeah.
Terrifying. Yeah. It does not? Do you
Like-
have to have a device to be micromobile?
Micromobility includes full active modes like cycling, walking, and using a scooter. It also includes partially active modes, for example, riding an e-cycle, which can have okay.
Perfect.
Does it cover mass transit, or is mass transit separate? Okay, that's not mass. Okay. Okay. And then the next page was next
I think
page was
Bruce
about
would
our
approve.
goals. I just listed the 5 subject areas and then basically put a link to the actual goals. Guess I could put like one of the kind of action items as an example if we wanted to, but I just left it kind of open. Infrastructure improvements. So I talked about the Lincoln resurfacing. That's the picture on the front. That one. It's at Lincoln and Maine.
How come I don't see where is the crosswalk? Oh, it's a picture
Yeah,
of Race.
the picture's on the front.
Oh.
The other one, the next one is Race Street.
Oh,
Maybe I
okay.
should put captions on those.
it would be helpful to know where they were.
Arrows. Could I put an arrow for something? Yeah, and then Race Street with all the new sidewalk ramps and everything. And then this is just a patch sidewalk that has just been happening all over town. And then talk about the Windsor Road resurfacing. A couple pictures of that. And you know, it'll be interesting to see how that works out. It's almost like a fully protected bike lane would be if you had, actual pylons or something through there. It's just a lot of people, I don't know, there's different opinions on whether that's safer or not on that kind of street, I guess. But different people have different preferences, but it's really not what we would expect, I think, for in-town street. It might be more of a rural area street.
As I was running on it this weekend, I was like, well, I mean, I do feel safer because I would hear the car approaching. And then, of course, I did the math, and I was like, but I would be dead by the time if a car did go over the rumble strip
Yeah,
and hit
it
me. I was
doesn't-
like, never mind.
It may give you a false sense of security there. I don't know. Okay, and then I did mention the other two projects we talked about last time. This is Senator Durbin that came to help open that First Street side path, and that had the adaptive lighting, and then this is the motion detected lighting on South Race Street by Clark Lindsay. So those I just put in there as examples of other stuff going on.
I would call, so the Savoy one is a shared use path. They're promoting it as shared use instead of calling it side path.
It's what?
Sorry, shared use or multi-use path.
Okay. Oh, rather than side path? What's the difference? Okay. Okay. Good to know. And then talked about the EQL projects.
Just let you know, side path is the right word. A side path is a biodirectional shared use path located immediately adjacent and parallel to a roadway.
Okay.
Just let you know. And it's one word, not two.
I think I had it as one word, but spell check complained. Blame everything on spell check. So the EQL projects, and then put a link to that map. It shows, I don't know if you guys looked at this, but yes, did you put this together, John?
Yeah.
It's a nice little map that shows, so like this is a speed study, so you can click on it and it says traffic calming study. That's the lights and sidewalks. Yeah, it already has lights there. That. And then this is a picture of where there's going to be a new multi-use side path that is shared that will connect through on the east side through the retreat development, and then it's basically an extension of Church Street, where Church Street goes across Lincoln, where there's a light and crosswalk, and then connects to the Church Street at Harvey, where so the city already owns that right away. There was just never anything built there. It's not really quite wide enough for a street anyway. What was it?
I was just going to mention, but actually, I think it's coming up that there's a lot of crashes at Church and Lincoln. And so that's an intersection that's probably going to need looking at when the side path, multi-use path, is encouraging more pedestrian traffic and bike traffic there.
Remember what? Oh, but it is being used. I mean, that was the other thing I was going to say is that when I took this picture, you can see that, I mean, it's not overgrown. People walk through there all the time. So it is being used, so it'd be a big improvement for them, for the people that are already using it.
Is that Urbana property? Just that, I can't remember anymore.
Yeah.
The city owns that?
City owns,
Oh, it's
yeah.
the right of way. That's interesting.
And then Vision Zero, I just mentioned the Safe Streets for All grant application that wasn't successful. But it comes up every year, so hopefully they can try again next year and this fall, whenever the deadline for that is. And then there is this new crash data dashboard. A little frustrating that it pops up all that information when you're trying to zoom in, but maybe there's something you learn to do after a while, I don't know. So you can get more information on each crash. You can filter it by year and stuff. Yeah, this just goes through 2021, so anything more recent than that, we'd still have to look at the Urbana police data that gets updated every month or two. And that just covers City of Urbana, what our officers handle. It doesn't cover anything outside of Urbana. It doesn't even cover what the U of I officers handle. But this does. This is RPC. This is Champaign County, provided by RPC. I guess they provide it as our metropolitan planning organization, part of their funding for that probably. So there's some analysis about what types, times of days, things like that. So that, if you haven't looked at that, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, in the county. A little less than that. And I guess, so there were two fatal, I didn't remember that, I thought the one in front of Schnucks was the previous year, but,
No, it's right here.
okay. So there are two, so I'll correct that.
120, 22.
It was 2022, right?
120, 22. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And not that it matters, but is that Cunningham and Park Street?
The other one was Cunningham and Park.
Is that Cunningham and Park Street where the fatal pedestrian crash was in May? I think it's Cunningham at Park. Is that right? Is this north
Oh,
of
I see.
University?
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's North University, okay.
Not the most important detail.
Okay. And then I did mention that 3 of the last 4 pedestrian fatalities were on Vine or Cunningham, considering that the one on Main was really on Vine too, because the person that hit her was on Vine when he turned. Now I gave last year's figures from the police data. So at least 16 involving pedestrians, at least 6 involving bicycles. So those don't include, and that's crashes, nearly all with injuries. I didn't go through and look at each one. Sometimes they don't get reported quite right in the initial data, and you'd have to look at the police reports anyway. The police reports is what they go by, and a lot of times those will show injuries where it doesn't in the original or in the preliminary police data might not show an injury, but then the police report does. So almost all the bicycle accidents, crashes don't get reported if there's no injuries, or unless there's a lot of property damage, which also doesn't happen that much. So
I
then-
wonder if you might put in injuries then instead of crashes reported.
Well, yeah,
Just so
Just
it
saying.
doesn't sound like there were only 6 crashes.
well, yeah, I mean, that was what was reported.
Yeah, you might want to just mention that crashes without injuries are rarely reported.
Yeah, I mean, I've never reported a bike crash except the one where they carried me away in the ambulance.
Right, but that, yeah, it might just be worth mentioning that, bike crashes without just without injuries are often unreported.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll add that in there.
Well, there were some with non-injuries. There was one where a truck had a bike parked in the hotel lot. So it was listed as a crash. There were some, but, yeah. We can drill down.
And so, Audrey, is there anything else that you think should be in there? I have a third of a page left.
Well, I think I think that we should have what BPAC has done about it. In the case of the wheelchair that was killed in front of Schnucks, a recommendation was taken to the Traffic Commission by BPAC.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
BPAC voted on that.
Was that last year or was that the year before? Oh, yeah, it must have been last year because the crash was.
Yeah, and this annual report, is this for calendar year 2022? Is that the idea here?
Yeah.
Okay, so you checked up to the end of December. I had everything up till like the 19th of December, and the numbers do match pretty much. So maybe
Okay.
there weren't any
Yeah, I don't think.
further peds injured.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if they just hadn't updated through the end of December, or if there just weren't any after. People don't walk and bike as much in December, so it's possible there just weren't any bike ped crashes. I could mention total crashes. So there were like a couple hundred total
Well,
crashes
yeah,
with injuries that were car crashes.
and the complicated thing, of course, is with the university taking over all
Yeah.
of our crashes that happen on campus. Pretty much all of them. It makes it hard to track, and I have made a recommendation that RPC continue to break out their statistics by community, as they always have up till 2018, and then they decided to just break it out as urban or rural for the entire metropolitan area, which makes it very difficult for communities to take charge of their problem areas and get the bigger picture of what's going on for their community. I mean, smaller in terms of the county, but big in terms of the community. Also, they've made some serious errors in their statistics, which could not be caught if I wasn't aware of what's happening in our community. They listed in their application that we had 20% ped fatalities. Compared to overall, it's actually 37%. Which is a number that could have been significant in Safe Streets for All. So I think
That was for 1 year, for what time period?
they were using a 5-year time period.
5-year time period?
Yeah, they
37
subsequently have amended their Vision Zero resolution to fix the numbers. They also changed the time period. And so I have to check those numbers, but it gets increasingly difficult as they aren't posting up by community.
Over that 5-year time period, it was roughly a third of the fatalities were pedestrian fatalities.
37%,
Okay.
yeah. And that was overall, the whole metropolitan area. For Urbana, of course, it's more like 50%.
Okay. I'll see if I can do anything more with that. But I definitely add the recommendation taken to Traffic Commission. And then just kind of a listing of some of the other things we talked about. We had the presentation on the bicycle master plan review. Then the no parking in bike lanes resolution that council's already received, and that went to Traffic Commission. A couple good pictures on Green Street. And then the East University Avenue, that was also something that Audrey reminded me that we had sent a letter to City Council, so they already received information about that on the East University Avenue recommendations. And then the other grants applied for, Baker Lane, and Baker Lane was another ITEP one that we applied for, right?
Yeah.
So we applied for 2 ITEP
Mhm.
grants this cycle, and those we won't know about till probably May or April.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Should be coming up pretty soon.
Mhm.
So yeah, those 2, and then the Florida Avenue Raise grant were things that we supported.
Did the raise grant go in the same as the last time? There were no modifications to the
That
application?
didn't. That's only been once, and that was last year, right?
We did reapply for it. We didn't change the content very much. They changed some of the format of the application, kind of the organization of it, but it was essentially the same application resubmitted.
Okay, so you applied for the next raise cycle after the one. Okay.
Yep.
But then we also applied for the ITEP grant for that path along there, right? Okay. What happens if we get both?
That's a belt and suspenders approach. Well, if we get ITEP, we wouldn't be able to, I don't know. That would be a great problem to have. I haven't really thought through that part yet.
Okay. Budget for the sidewalk and path maintenance. I should say thank you, City Council. I just said thank you. I was pretty excited that, we've been complaining about that for a couple years, and that they just kind of went overboard last year. And yeah, and we'll see. I mean, it's starting to show, and I think
We
a couple
can
years
see
from now,
it's-
when all
it's
the projects are
good.
done, it will be pretty impressive. But yeah, $680,000 for improvements this year, and then plus the 1.2 million for the EQL projects. Plus they raised the 5-year, the capital improvement plan projects 5 years roughly. And, it's good for 1 year, but then they kind of do long-term projections for the next 4 years after that. And that used to be 150,000, and staff recommended and council accepted 300,000 per year for the next 4 years. So I'm thinking that's kind of a minimum, but at least it's better than 150,000. Increased staff support for BPAC. We had an actual vote on that last year. I just added that this year because it came up as a topic several times.
Now, you don't have proper use of the subjunctive there.
We don't what?
If there were a dedicated staff person.
Yeah.
You say if there was, and
Oh, I see.
the proper subjunctive
Grammatical
would
error.
be if
Sorry,
there
I'm
were.
not hearing very well today.
Spell
If
check.
there were a dedicated staff. Okay, I see what you mean.
Spell check would have gone the other way.
Spell check got him on that.
Grammarly would have cleaned that thing up.
Well, yeah, the grammar boss didn't catch that. It wasn't double underlined or anything. Okay. Application to renew the gold. Just kind of a general statement. Oh, that reminds me, I did put messages on all the bike lists and in the last issue of Urbana U thing. What's it called?
All about you.
All About You, yeah. About submitting public comments. If you haven't seen that yet, I'll send out actually it's a survey. The League of American Bicyclists, as part of the process of reviewing your application, creates a survey for your community. And so I sent out links to that. If you have your All About You, there's a link in there. If you have that from March, But I'll send out another message just to BPAC in case you guys haven't done it yet. It's just it doesn't count against us or anything. They just want kind of, they say they want context in evaluating your application, and the community input helps provide that context. That's what they say. I trust them. So yeah, that just, so they'll be announcing that in May. So actually the deadline on that is probably the end of this month to fill out that survey. Then the 3 feet minimum passing signs, that came up again. I think John's working on that. Traffic calming policy. John mentioned that he was thinking about doing it, so we kind of jumped on that and gave him some suggestions and links to other things. So I put in a link to that Naperville toolkit.
I would also like to shout out to that ADA accessible link there. Links often should be descriptive instead of,
Click here.
yeah, or HTTP XYZ 45.
Yeah, the only reason sometimes I put that I use the HTTP in most of it actually, because I'm not sure, like, if people are going to print this out, then you lose the link, or if somebody saves it wrong, it doesn't save the link, or I don't know. So
Fair.
I
That's fair.
kind of go both. I
Yeah,
don't know.
Yeah.
So I didn't on this one, but I think on all the others I actually did put in the HTTP. I don't know which is better.
Alright.
The e-bike discussions, that Bruce presented some information on that. Just kind of a tip of the iceberg probably, that we'll be looking into that more. And then the presentation on VO, where Shay came and presented some user data. That's it.
Did you check how this relates to the annual report you presented last year?
How it compares.
Yeah, if you had any goals, for example, in last year to address the progress on anything. I don't know if you did or not. I haven't looked yet.
Yeah, I read through last year's a couple times. I didn't really
Okay.
notice anything
So
that
it seems fine.
we were required to update from that. Yeah. So it looks like the main thing is to add a couple things to Vision Zero.
I think one, under the update for VO, City of Champaign recently moved to exit the IGA governing VO. And so I don't know if the IGA is gonna dissolve, but I know Champaign mentioned they're, 90 days before they exit the IGA, and they'll develop their own kind of ordinances addressing e-bikes, but I think City of Urbana won't have any. I don't know if that's worth mentioning in the VO update.
Well, I don't think she talked about that, did she?
No,
She didn't know that. I think this happened in a
More recently.
Champaign council meeting 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
well,
So it wouldn't be in the annual report, but if they have questions about it, or it's something I could mention in the presentation, but I don't really know a lot about it, and maybe planning staff is going to be doing something with Champaign on it. I don't know. Do you guys?
so here's what I know. Like the university, Champaign, and Urbana, we met in April of 22.
Is your mic on?
Yes.
Okay.
I need to be leaned in much closer. At that point, like, we had decided on dissolving the IGA, and we are currently in the process of dissolving it. And last week, City of Champaign sent out the notice of withdrawal, and so that process has started. City of Champaign is working on a new contract with VO. As you guys already probably know, like, the university has their own contract with VO. So we are renewing our contract. City of Champaign is renewing their contract. They're renewing it for 3 years, and we are trying to get it for 5 years. City of Urbana is not going to have a contract or license with VO, but what Lily said was City of Urbana is going to allow VO to operate on city property as usual, but there is not going to be a separate contract with the city. So yeah, that's one of the updates. It's not official yet. Again, like the contract negotiations will begin soon with the university and VO. Think same thing with Champaign. The contract has not been signed. I think it's just the city council was presented with this information that the city would like to have a 3-year pilot with VO, and then they will work on.
I guess we can look at their contract and university's contract and see if their concerns are
Is the-
justified. Yeah.
Is the university going to continue to ban scoots?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. So as far as the annual report goes,
I saw one more thing. I think John told us, and it's in the capital improvement plan, the safety study on Lincoln Avenue from Green to Florida.
that
Yeah,
was,
that
I
is-
think, was part of
That
the-
is underway. Well, it didn't start till 2023, but
Oh, it didn't?
it
Okay.
is in the capital improvement plan. It's underway now, but yeah, I don't
You
think
just mentioned it then.
right.
And who's doing it?
RPC's leading that study.
Was that in the Safe Streets for All grant that didn't go through and we're just going to pay for it anyway, or?
No, this is Lincoln from Florida to Green, a different
Oh,
segment of
okay.
Lincoln.
Who got where did the funding come from?
They got a state research program grant for it. I may have that acronym wrong, but state grant funds for it. Mm-hmm.
For safety, it's a safety grant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Safe Streets for All application, that was for far north Lincoln.
Yeah, from Washer to Killarney.
Yeah, okay.
And that was implementation or study?
That was implementation. Mm-hmm.
Who's done the study for that?
Well, it referred to as implementation. There would be phase 1 planning that would
Could do
happen.
both, yeah.
It would be phase 1 planning, then design, then construction. So it would be going through those stages of implementation.
Well, the funny thing about the Green to Florida on Lincoln Avenue is I was looking at the RPC minutes and I saw that they plan to use the pedestrian enhancements guidelines that they produced in 2017,
Mhm.
which refer to Lincoln Avenue between Florida and Green as the design that you want to emulate elsewhere. So it's kind of circular. We're going to use the plan that actually calls for what's present on the ground right now to be conformed to in North Lincoln, or north of that zone, for example, Maine and Lincoln. It had to conform to the same usage in terms of crosswalks and signage as the southern part of Lincoln Avenue. So is there a committee that's watching the progress of that planning? I hope that was just a shortcut to say they were going to use those guidelines, because those guidelines were really actually out of date the minute they were published, since Fed Highways came out with a new set of guidelines the same year. Do we have someone overlooking it, or is it just RPC and then they're going to present a final product?
No, they'll be presenting it to the city, and so we'll do a quality control review of their work, like we do with, essentially RPC is acting as a consultant for the city with this study.
For the city?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yep.
Before we get into staff reports, which we're kind of getting into now, let's deal with the annual report. Are you guys comfortable with approving it as suggested, with suggested corrections? And then I can send you a final copy in the next week. And unless there's strong objections, I'll go ahead and present it to City Council. Does that sound like a
I
plan?
move to approve.
So is there a motion to approve it with suggested changes?
I move to approve.
Okay, moved by Sue. Is there
I
a sec-
second, and thank you, Bill. Appreciate all
second
your
by
work on this.
Annie.
That's a ton of work.
It looks great. Since we were talking about subjunctive tenses and I think the font size under application to renew BFC Gold is larger than the other sections.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Thanks. Okay, any further discussion on that before we vote? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Thanks. Okay. I'll go back to my seat. Okay, next is staff report. John, do you have anything for us?
Oh, sure, I've got stuff. Okay, so I thought I'd just, Billy asked me to just touch on the land development code that we presented to council last night. Definitely was a riveting discussion. I encourage anybody to tune in if you didn't get a chance to, but we were really excited to present an update to Chapter 21 of the City Code, which governs land development. It hadn't been updated since 1998, so it's definitely overdue. And just some highlights of taking the code itself, keeping a lot of the same procedures and requirements, the basic requirements for development, but then also expanding with a manual of practice as an administrative document that will contain the technical design and construction standards for the city. They'll be kind of separate from the city code itself. So the idea to allow us to be more flexible in updating those as things go along, and we don't wait another 25 years for that kind of an update. But no, there's a lot of good stuff there, and you know, we've got encourage anybody to take a look at the language in the code, and so also included some highlights, like some 3-page summary of some key points that we're introducing with this update. Definitely interested in taking any comments, and we have some questions from council we will address and be back next Monday.
I did, when I just like opened it and searched for bicycle kind of, and saw a couple things, and it seemed like, I mean, in the old one I remember looking at, and I don't think there was anything about bicycles. So I did notice it kind of said, it incorporated the comprehensive plan, which also incorporates a bicycle master plan. So it does, anything in our master plan is basically incorporated into the land development code. So it seems like there might be a little bit more leverage to, say if a developer was building a subdivision. The one that comes to mind is there's an existing bike path at Southridge, kind of, I don't know, it's about a quarter mile north of the city limits. It goes across Southridge there, east-west.
Mm-hmm.
And if you extend that another half mile, it hits Meadowbrook Park, but right now it's not developed. Say someone was going to develop a subdivision there, you could actually probably require them to build the bike path. Before, it seemed like, I know when there was some subdivision of the area around the old nursing home, we couldn't require them to build the side path because it wasn't in the code. It was, even though it was in our plans, all they had to build was a 4-foot sidewalk, and that's what they built. So am I reading that right? Do we have more leverage to require that kind of infrastructure? No.
Yeah,
would we?
yeah. Which, you know, it does definitely point to the comprehensive plan. So if there are things in the comprehensive plan that can guide that, it definitely makes it a stronger case, like you say. Yeah, and we do specifically call out the bicycle master plan as being a part of the comprehensive plan.
Does that include the pedestrian plan too?
I mean, it does because it was adopted is it adopted amendment to the comprehensive plan? I believe that's how it was phrased.
Yeah, comprehensive plan is kind of considered a plan of plans, so a lot of these others were adopted as amendments or, yeah, I guess amendments to the plan.
Yeah.
I know there's been grumblings on a community listserv about ADUs, which help build dense, walkable, bikeable cities. Does this have anything to do with that?
I'm sorry. Could you explain what ADU is?
Oh, okay. It's just building like
Accessory dwelling
Accessory
unit?
dwelling unit.
yeah.
Oh, sure.
That- That's more of a zoning
It
issue.
is
I
more
think.
of a zoning issue, which
Okay.
it is an important thing. I know that the community development department really looking forward to updating the zoning ordinance at some time.
Okay.
To where
I
we
just
make
didn't
sure
know.
that we work together in that.
I just don't want to be asleep when that happens. I just want to make sure I'm.
No, very good point. Very
I
good
have
point.
opinions, and my neighbors as well have many opinions. But I just want to make sure I'm not missing that. All right. Thank you.
You bet. You bet. Which I guess I could share. And so we're excited to have that. That doesn't work, but we're excited. That's hit mine. As that will definitely help our planning staff become more effective with a full-time director in that position.
Yeah, I think still to be approved by council, but yeah, I think that's the
Definitely
last
candidate.
step.
I should say there's a candidate.
There's a candidate,
candidate.
for community development
There's the right
director.
word.
Just on the subject of ADUs, if I can add really quick, this, I guess, isn't exactly ADUs. That is something planning staff are talking about and thinking about. But we are in discussions to bring a text amendment forward that would allow tiny home developments on a single lot. So it's something in that vein that is more imminently in the works.
Nice. All right. And then getting started a little bit later than we would normally like. We were pretty engineering and public works were pretty distracted by this land development code update, but we have to get our capital improvement plan update together for by the end of the fiscal year. So we're tearing into that, and there's some topics we'll be focusing on. We'll have CDBG. Community development block grant funds again primarily for sidewalk and street lights, $350,000 for that. And TIF 4, the basically like Cunningham Avenue corridor, understanding from our partners in community development that there's TIF 4 money. It's got like 3 to 4 years left, so we're going to try to help out find good use for those funds within that corridor, and I think there's a lot of opportunities up there. Infrastructure's a pretty easy application for those funds, so I think there'd be some good opportunities up there. Going along with council goals, we're going to be looking at all of our priority schemes and prioritization of projects. We're going to look at it, make sure we're looking at it with an equity lens, and we have some tools that we're looking at, considering using some provided by the CDC, the EPA, some of the different metrics and mapping maps that are out there that we could just kind of make sure that we are considering equity in our decision making. We've got the results of our traffic signal asset management plan that was created. So we do have a pretty extensive list of priorities for our 30 some odd traffic signals intersections, and so we're going to prioritize those and start incorporating those into our capital improvement plan. And one that I'm definitely looking forward to is improving the way we use safety and crash risk as a metric in prioritizing our projects. One thing I'm going to be working on is separating intersections from street segments, understanding that intersections is where like 3/4 of our crashes are happening. You know, that's, if we want to really make an impact on safety, that's where we need to focus our efforts. So, got some work there. Excuse me. And so, of course, very interested in any suggestions from BPAC about priorities, projects moving forward. You know, of course, one thing we'll be doing is taking last year's capital improvement plan and building upon it. So part of the aim will be updating our processes, making incremental improvements, challenging the conclusions made last year, and so I'd definitely be open to any suggestions that the commission has moving forward with that. We'll be working towards presenting to council an initial draft April 17th, so just less than a month away. And then 8:40. Okay, got a little time for this. I did really appreciate the traffic calming suggestions that were presented earlier at an earlier meeting. One, I thought I'd just be interested to pitch an idea and get some input, or have you guys think about it and get back to me. I know Bill. Bill brought up the EQL map and the Broadway Avenue segment from University up to Country Club. That was one that was going to be a speed study. We'll be starting here this month or early April. We're going to do speed study on Broadway, Kerr, Crystal Lake Park Drive, and then a few other streets, Anderson and Cottage Grove, I want to say, and Glover. But those three segments there, Broadway, Kerr, Crystal Lake, those would be interesting to set up our sensors at the same time period to see the traffic pattern, traffic network moving through that. A concept I'd like to try out is to get the base, data in the spring for Broadway, is we already have some data from the last 5 years that definitely point to some statistical speeding there. So I want to get a base case in the spring, sometime in the summer, put in some experimental traffic calming feature, and then test again and then do the same speed study in the fall and see what effects do we see. And so thinking about that Broadway Avenue corridor, a big characteristic of it is there are no, if you're driving, there's nothing stopping you from University to Country Club Road. There's no intersection, there's no stop control or anything like that. There are a lot of mid-block crossings, and with a lot of demand to get to those parks on the west side from the neighborhoods on the east side. And so I think those mid-block crossings or street intersections, they could be good opportunities for either horizontal restrictions or maybe some vertical things like speed tables or things like that. So it just kind of off the cuff. If you think about enhancing some of those mid-block crossings, what are some pros or cons the commission think about between a speed table, ramping up to basically curb height for a distance and then ramping back down? The hope to be it's not so abrupt that my snowplow operators don't just want to kill me, or they don't just like pull them up, the first winter, or versus like horizontal choke points at those. So I guess I'd be interested in thoughts, just kind of pros and cons on those ideas.
Is there a temporary table you can put there to see how it works? Like, do they make rubber ones or something?
They do for construction. There's these temporary ramps. Now these temporary ramps could be made with the old-fashioned ways. You lay down tar paper or visqueen or something, and you put some, basically cold patch and just pack that in. That's your temporary ramp. Or they make some prefab ones that you could do that too. So it could be a relatively easy installation. Test it out for the summer, take it away before the winter, just,
Yeah,
you wouldn't get plowed
I've
and
thought
stuff.
about maybe something like that at Vine in Maine, actually, and see if a table would work there.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I think it'd be interesting to experiment with those if it's legal now. I mean, if your snowplow drivers aren't going to complain too much.
I saw one somewhere that was integrated as kind of a pedestrian amenity to get from some shopping to a park. And it was really very cool. You know, it sort of keeps the pedestrian at the same level. They don't have to step up, step down, and the cars see them very clearly because they're raised somewhat.
Yeah, that visibility, that better visibility, I like that feature a lot. Yeah,
Is
well,
there's-
and because you think of Broadway too, it's the vertical curves, sight distance is very important on that corridor too. I mean,
I'd
really,
have
they
to
just have
try
the
it,
one-
my
they
bike
really just
going
have the
30
one
miles
hill.
per hour though, see what it does coming down the
That-
hill on your
yeah,
bike.
that's what I was gonna, because I know Washington and Anderson would love, people on Washington are just exhausted with the speed, how fast people drive down Washington. But I think,
Right.
yeah, and I'm wondering, and so I've always just wanted a stop sign, crosswalk, something very simple. But I don't know how it works with, how it gets integrated with bike lanes. I know people, I used to live in a city that had a lot of speed bumps. And I guess what people said, it was hard if you were pulling like a carrier, if you were pulling something behind you on your bike. I guess it was problematic
okay.
for people.
Okay.
I personally did not mind them, because I should not be speeding down those streets either, frankly. I mean, that, fair is fair, so.
Well, and Broadway is a case where after the Park District completes this ITEP project they're working on, they'll have a bike path. Will that be all the way continuous to
Yeah.
the
it'll go
Anita
clear
Purvis?
down.
So
It'll- well, go down to Park Street, yeah.
yeah, so from Park Street to the Anita Purvis Nature Center, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, to the driveway there, so.
yeah.
It won't quite make it to Kerr Avenue.
So that would be a factor for Broadway at least, but that's a really good point. I mean, drainage is another thing. You interrupt the gutter flow with some of these features, which I've seen for like the horizontal bump outs. They've got them where they, instead of making the whole curb swoop in, you have this like gutter continue through, and they just like build a median like at the edge of the gutter. If you can visualize what I'm saying. Sorry, I didn't bring any pictures. But yeah, okay.
I mean, I always imagine that you can just, I was actually just showing Bill a picture of this. The city accidentally created a bump out at Race in Washington. Bill, was I showing you a picture of?
Yeah, I
With-
guess there'd been some construction at the end of the sidewalk ramp or there or something, and they put some cones out.
They
and
just put like what I call like those human-sized
So-
cones, those big giant cones.
So Annie claimed it was a bump out.
Nice.
It was a pop-up bump out.
There were these when
Because
I was,
people don't
oh,
want
yeah.
their cars touching anything. Like they get
Sure.
they get freaked out if you put something on the street. They don't mind like touching pedestrians and bikes, but if you put like a giant cone, even a tiny cone, like I wouldn't say I would personally ever deploy a cone if I saw people speeding down a street. But I have noticed if one does deploy a cone, people just get really slow. So that's just another possibility, are those big orange people cones.
Sure, that's totally the idea of the horizontal choke points, and the barrels you're talking about, or the traffic. Now I'm blanking, but the concrete barriers are also.
When
Possible
you collect data in these areas, do you have new sensors you can use that don't like flash people's speed at them?
Yeah, they're going to be these rectangular discs, like or pucks like this. They'll be taped to the pavement.
Okay, because I think people do adjust
unless
theirs.
you know what you're looking for, people won't.
Yeah,
People won't know there's something there.
'cause, I mean, those others work pretty well as speed
Right.
control. So then you don't really get a good impression of what's actually going on there when
For sure.
when nobody's looking.
For sure, and that's and for like the speed trailer that we have, like essentially we've just worked it out with the police department. So like, hey, if you want to use the speed trailer as like an enforcement, educational enforcement mechanism, that's great. We're not going to use it to collect data that we're going to hang our hat on, but it's because it interferes with the behavior. But it is an effective tool for communicating that, for sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you. It'll be great if you can find the time and energy to do it. This would be great.
I think it'll be really interesting to see, and I don't know.
it'd be cool to have some data. I like data.
But, and then,
Yeah,
I don't know if you have, I don't think they did speed studies, but when there was a lot of construction on University in Cunningham, especially, people were using that as a shortcut all the time. And I think some people kind of caught on to it that, oh, this is a lot faster. So they may still be doing that, but it's probably, the volume's probably down a lot since they've fixed those, since that construction's done.
That's a good point. I haven't, because I was getting somewhat regular calls about Broadway when that construction was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thanks. We did have a committee last month, I think, that was going to try to get together and start talking about things to put in the All About You newsletter. Was that Sue
I think
and
that was,
Dan?
Susan and me.
Okay. Have you had a chance to meet yet?
We haven't got together yet. There are a few bike events and bike rides going on in May. There's Bike to School Day, I think the Mother's Day ride. And then Cynthia and I will teach a class too, like a Traffic Skills 101 is what it used to be called. I forget the name of it now, but teaching people how to bike responsibly.
Yeah, I think the whole bike month thing would be a good thing to get in there.
So the third is Bike to School Day, so I don't know if putting that in the May or the April newsletter would be better.
Yeah.
It'd have to
probably.
be April. So it's
Yeah.
May 3rd is the bike school day? Yeah, it'd have to be April. It usually comes out second week. She's shooting more for first week of the month, but first or second week of the month. So you try to get it to her by the first of the month.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe something about Bike to School Day then
Mhm.
for April.
All the events that are happening in month of May or April, the bike-related events, I'll post them on our website also.
Okay. Are there any other committees or staff reports people think of we need to hear from? I don't think so. So no new business. How about announcements? Any announcements? Nope. Other than I'll send out that link for the survey, bicycle-friendly survey. And you're free to forward that to people that may not have seen it, but I have posted it to both of the main bicycle lists and All About You. And I think I sent it to you. Did you have any student groups that you could send it to?
I will send it to some groups.
Okay.
I completely forgot and I noted it down.
Yeah, it'd be good to, and now that they're back from spring break and
Yeah.
stuff, it'd be good because we don't usually get a lot of student input and they're big users, so
I will.
it'd be great if we could get more. Future topics. I think Annie mentioned one earlier.
Yeah, I would like to present next month on possibly adding an infrastructure called Shark Teeth to, it sounds more exciting than it is, to Lincoln in Maine and Lincoln in Stoughton. And then possibly might present something about it's paint on the ground is what I'm talking about at Race in Washington. So I'd just like to present on, see what we think about those ideas. And at some point, I would like to present on small, successful public spaces, so pop-up people spaces. But I cannot guarantee that I could present on all three of those items next month. But it would be fun to kind of put my head around what was presented in the public realm study for downtown Urbana and use the power of my MFA to put some stuff together and think about what that would look like. So I'd be happy to present on that, but I can't guarantee it'll happen next month.
Okay, thanks. Any other future topics?
I think I can, I remember you asked me to present about eco counters a long time ago. I will someday. I'm in the process of purchasing, how many more? 14 more for 7 remaining corridors for the MCOR, the MCOR project had identified, RPC had identified 12 corridors. So I'm in the process of purchasing the remaining 14 counters that will go to the 7 more locations. So once I have them all installed, hopefully by the end of this year, then I can share some data. I can share some data about the 4 that we currently have installed already, but I would like to present at least if we have more installed.
Okay.
Other than that, I am working on updating the campus bike plan. So it is to be published in 2024. And I've already started work with a urban planning student, and we will be working with Masters of Urban Planning student groups in fall and spring semester, and student planning organization and other student groups to work on the plan, as well as develop and perform a bike audit of the campus to check the condition of our bicycle network, and develop similar to this current version of the bike plan, what the high, medium, and low priority projects should be. So these are the 2 main things. If I remember others, I will let you all know.
Okay. And then Youssef,
By the way, for eco counters, I would say please don't put me in for next 2-3 months. There's a lot going on. I don't think I'll be able to spend time on it. And the bike plan update, most likely we, my student and I, we will probably present in the fall semester.
okay, sounds good. And Youssef?
Yeah, I was on deck to do an update on the pedestrian master plan, but I wanted to get people's thoughts on just the level of detail that is meant to go into. Are we looking for a high level, just going through the goals and strategies and where it's at, or do we want to dive more into actually how well each of those goals are being accomplished?
You want to dive?
Yeah, I would guess the latter,
Okay.
because it's still so fresh in our mind. what the
How many?
colors
It's like
were.
700 pages. How many pages is it?
It's not that long, but it's the actual initiatives listed in the plan are manageable, but collecting the data takes some time.
We can forward you the application we sent for the bicycle-friendly community.
Okay.
That's pedestrian though. Well, some of that might apply. I don't know. We'll forward you that and see if it's helpful or not.
John has already helped point me to a number of resources, so I just have to jump into them. But it was just more about, okay, what level of detail do I need to jump into it? And it sounds like more detail is preferable.
Is this the first review of this pedestrian master plan that's being done?
Yeah.
So you get to set the tone.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, you might. I mean, I haven't looked at it from that perspective in a while. You might come across certain areas you want to go into detail on, and
Okay.
others where you might not need it.
Okay.
But,
I'll look at the review for the bicycle master plan, at least I have that, and see how much detail that went into, and try to gauge it on that then.
it's a good idea. Okay.
Is, now that we got this annual report done, is it a good time to talk about goals? I know,
Put that on as a future item, yeah.
yeah.
And actually update them. Some we can take off because we accomplished, and others we,
Some may carry forward, and
okay. All right, it's right on time, even with our 10-minute recess, so. Thanks a lot. See you next month. This meeting's adjourned.